Okay.
I was in a meeting the other day with a group of women entrepreneurs who were pushing out a new product, and they said, we want to do this course or whatever, and they were describing the course, and I said, great, so your pricing is going to start at $2,500 per course. And they looked at me and they said, what? No, we were thinking like 300. And I said, 300? I know exactly what other people charge for this, and it's not $300. So it is a tendency, very, very much a tendency. The other thing I think is the mentality of supporting each other in a way that's a lot less verbal or emotional. So we as women constantly provide a lot of emotional support for other women entrepreneurs. We understand what they're going through. We try to empathize with it. But the way that men networking circles, which I'm now sometimes a part of, the way they help each other is a lot more directed at building wealth, at closing clients, at all of these ways that are much more tangible outcomes. And I think that we as women have been really good at building these like support networks, which we drastically need. But I think there has to come a point where we start saying, okay, we've discussed it, we've felt really good about it together, we've empathized, we've given each other a listening ear, but now that needs to turn into a contract, an agreement, a lead, and I think we are stopping short of that kind of support. And I think I'm really excited about the kinds of networks of women that say, I'm not just going to support you emotionally. I'm here for that. Yes, absolutely. But what I'm really going to do is I'm going to push for you to get that contract in this, in this community that I'm a part of, or I'm going to push to make sure you are the preferred, partner, supplier.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And that's kind of some of the wonderful ways forward for mentoring, which is find emotional support. I'd be the first to tell you it's critical, but you also really need to have the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah, totally.
And sometimes that gets clouded over by these unconscious struggles in which it's hard to see them because you're just too wrapped up in, oh my gosh, I can't do it, or I don't have enough and to be able to do it. So
I think I remember once looking at like a list of companies in the blockchain space, and I would notice that all of their advisory boards, it was the same people sitting in each other's advisory boards, and then they were all in this like group of friends. And I said, so this group of friends is giving each other equity and supporting each other and giving each other funding, contracts, etc. And together their companies are growing, and so together they're all building their own wealth. And so all of them have risen together. And all of the women in groups that I was a part of, they were all giving each other, emotional support. And I said, yes, emotional support is super important. I'm a huge advocate for it. And I think the world needs a lot more empathy. But what else do we need? Women need access to money. Women need access to contracts. Women need to build their wealth and the wealth and the power that comes with having more wealth and being able to make investment decisions, in being able to grow their companies to higher, profit, or to bigger exits. So I think that's been something, but I think those two areas in pricing yourself well, and then learning how to help other women build their wealth and contributing to that concretely, I think those two areas are big gaps for us. And I think we really need to work on that collectively.
I completely agree. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How has your upbringing made mastering a mindset for success easier or harder?
That's a good question. And I actually I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because I've been thinking about my upbringing. I'm currently quarantined in Honduras, so I'm spending a lot of time with my family for the first time in many, many years. And I think, a big piece of it was understanding how much my parents really gave to me as a young person. They really struck an interesting balance between being there and having some boundaries and saying, there are certain things that you can't do. And there are moments where, like, we're going to wait up. If you went out to a party, we're going to wait up until you come home, and we're going to talk to you and see if you had fun. But it was always, I was allowed to do a lot of things that many other people weren't allowed to do, apparently. So I've come to learn, because my parents also respected a lot of my sovereignty and my autonomy. And so they trusted my judgment a lot. And the fine balance that they struck between saying, you are a person that needs to learn how to make good decisions, and saying, I'm here to listen to your thought process through those decisions. I think that's something that's really, really powerful. I think the clearest example was when I was 16, I decided that I didn't want to be particularly religious anymore. And so my parents are both very much Christian or Catholic, and they they maybe now a little bit less so, but they're still internally very faithful. And at the time, it was very much looked down upon, especially in Honduras, to, not be religious, where 98% of the population is religious. But my parents, they said, okay, if that's the decision that you want to make, then you have to, understand why you're making that decision. Because one of my brothers had, said that he was atheist. And so they didn't want me to lose my faith because my older brother had. And so I was jumping on his bandwagon. So they made me write a paper. And so they made me write this paper, and it was something like a 12-page paper about why I had taken this decision. And to do that, it was a research paper. So I had to read the Bible, I had to speak to a priest and ask questions, and I had to look at, different histories of religion and make these arguments as to why I decided that this was the way that I wanted to move forward with my life. And once I submitted the paper, they accepted the decision. It was just they wanted me to foster critical judgment. And I think that's a wonderful example of saying, I respect you, I respect your judgment, but I'm here for you. And I want to understand and make sure that I'm guiding you in the direction where you can exhibit that critical judgment always. And so I think that's how it contributed in a very meaningful way. I'm very grateful for it.
Great. Sort of last kind of quick question. What advice would you give to women who are struggling with wanting peer support?
I think it's vulnerability is a two-way street. And I think when we go to our friends and our family, sometimes it can be really hard to say that you feel there's a shortcoming, where you feel like you failed, or you feel like you're going through something that you might not be able to work your way out of alone. I think support can only come if you open the doors to let it in, right? Which means that you need to be really brave in being open and finding the people that you know that you can do that with. And so I think I'm a really big fan of cultures of vulnerability, because I think the more that we are able to better work through and express how we feel and what sort of things are happening in the world as we feel them, I think that is ultimately what leads to greater empathy and what leads to people knowing how to help you. Sometimes if I'm angry or sad, I say, I really need this. Because the other person sometimes doesn't know how to deal with that emotion. And that's normal, because we haven't built these kinds of cultures before. So I think it's really important to open up to people in a way where you are really expressing that vulnerability, but you're also finding empathy in what they're going through as receivers of your vulnerability and saying, it would be helpful for me if you did this right now. Right. So I think both of those go hand in hand.
And it will bring you an awful lot of support too, in terms of being able to get what you want, in terms of being going forward with your business, because if you know what you want deep down inside, it's easier to ask for what you want outside.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to vent and just say, I just got out of a client meeting and it was horrible and this is what happened. And sometimes you need a way to reformulate that so that you can go back to that client and say, actually, here's a way that we can work together. So sometimes there's moments where you need both, but it's really helpful to be able to express that and release that to someone that is helpful or can be helpful, because also you've built that practice between you where this person now knows what the best way to help you is. And it's okay to tell them, right now, I just need this. And a person that truly wants to support you will give you just that when you need it. Exactly.
I just wanted to sort of wrap up and say thank you so much for openly sharing today with our listeners, your inspirational psychological journeys, which are always really interesting and articulate and full of great antidotes of what's really sort of been important moments in your life, and which have kind of undertaken to become the successful female founder that you are today. And those of us at Women's Entrepreneurs Global are committed to powering the success of female founders. For more information on our guests and this podcast and many other founder programs, please visit womenentrepreneurs.global, which is the first startup studio for women. And part of helping young founders move ahead is for us to facilitate, I think, this open dialogue that we had today that's non-stigmatizing about some common unconscious struggles, such as the fear of failure or not being good enough, and that loud, chattering, nonstop internal critic at times, to kind of allow women to listen that it's normal and there's ways for you to kind of overcome that. So for our listeners, if if somebody would like to reach out to you, how would you have them reach out to you? Where would you like them to do that?
I'm really big on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, so all of those are perfectly okay. I go by Lucia Gallardo on LinkedIn, and then at Gallardo_Luci on Twitter, and then Lucia.Gallardo on Instagram. So those are all places where I can be found.
Great. So for our listeners, if you have any questions or comments, you'd like to know more about our guests or our shows, please contact me at Dr. Leslie Knudsen at drleslieKnudsen.com. Thanks so much, Lucia.
Thank you very much.